How much would you be willing to stake on a victory? $10, your iPod, your car? How about your life? Is a sports game worth your life? Well, to the Native American Indians, the game of lacrosse was, and the death risk that was associated with competition was extreme. The game of lacrosse originated as a competitive sport among Indian tribes and has, through the centuries, evolved into a program internationally embraced by all age groups and competition levels. Originating with the Native Americans, lacrosse is the oldest sport in Northern America. Though it was given its name by early French settlers, the game was closely intertwined with the lifestyle and culture of Native Americans. From there, it grew to a program in Canada further shaped by Dr. George Beers, the man who made the program what it is today. The game first began among the southeastern Indians. Lacrosse held great significance in Native American culture and lifestyle. It reached into their realms of social ceremony and custom and was reflective of their preparations of warfare. Dr. Thomas Benham Jr., the author of American Indian Lacrosse, Little Brother of War, wrote how the ceremonialism of preparations and rituals required of players were identical to those practiced before departing on the warpath. The game was shaped around the loose set of rules and regulations. Each competitor used 2 sticks, called crosses. The sticks used by Native American Indians were very similar to the one I'm holding now. They were made of wood in a hook shape and were capable of inflicting not only much injury, but often extreme pain and, more or not, death. Teams were usually divided by tribal divisions or villages, and most games were played by male competitors. The game was much more than simple regulations and wooden sticks. It was the epicenter of the Native American lifestyle. The gambling that surrounded games was extensive, and severe injury and death were by no means unusual. The game was often a forum to settle disputes between tribes and was extreme practice for military training. Sports historian and writer Ralph Hickok wrote, "The Cherokees called the sport the Little Brother of War because it was considered excellent military training. A team consisted of hundreds, even thousands of players, often an entire village or tribe, and the goals were often miles apart, and a game might last as long as 3 days. Since most players couldn't get anywhere near the ball, they focused on using their sticks to injure opponents." Alongside the strong history of Native American culture, lacrosse took root in Canada. In the 19th century, the Montreal Olympic Club was formed, and in 1844, they established a team of Europeans to compete with the Native American lacrosse program. The game fueled growth for the sport, and in 1856, the Montreal Lacrosse Club was formed. The club was the first to develop the written rules of the game that had ever been documented. Arising from the sport as an experienced goaltender, Dr. George Beers was recognized as the father of lacrosse. He codified the rules of the game for the first time. He also implemented the use of a rubber ball, which is very similar to the one that we use in games today, instead of a deerskin ball that was used in Native American competition. He also recrafted the stick from the hook of woody, even though wooden sticks are often used today, to something similar to the stick that I'm holding now. This is much more modern than the one that he used, but it had a separate head from a shaft, and it was shaped in more of a way that would hold the ball and increase flexibility of the stick, but also a more fluid passing and catching. It's significantly more refined than the wooden one of the Native American tribes. Dr. George Beers also formed the National Lacrosse Association in 1867, which is to this day the national governing body of lacrosse in the whole of the United States. With this strong history behind it, the sport has spread throughout the nation and is today played at all levels of competition. Lacrosse has exploded at the youth, high school, and collegiate levels. As John Johnson noted and reported about USYL, the United States Youth Lacrosse, the number of players in youth lacrosse has nearly doubled since 2001, from 125,000 players nationwide to over 241 by the end of 2007. Though it began as war training and a method of dispute settlement, the game has grown into an international program. With the Native American history, built on extreme competition and calculated risk, the game has grown to a recreational sport with its roots in Canada and the Montreal Lacrosse Club. And it was further shaped and refined to what it is today by Dr. George Beers. Lacrosse, a sport that is so popular in our culture today, both in the States and internationally, was established origins in such violent sport with military focus that claimed the lives of so many of its participants. Thank you.